My name is Daisy Morgan. I am 28 years old, and I live in California. I stood in the middle of the crowded stadium, wearing my heavy black graduation gown. The air smelled like cheap perfume and nervous sweat. I was about to receive my PhD, but my hands were shaking for a different reason. I had just checked my phone, hoping for a good job or "We are proud of you" from my parents. Instead, I saw a text from my dad. It read, "Don't expect help, you're on your own now." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Even today, after all my hard work, he still wanted to make me feel small. He wanted me to feel desperate and dependent. I looked up at the stands. I saw him sitting there with his arms crossed, looking bored. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about money. But then my phone buzzed again. It was a call from Mark, my chief financial officer. I shouldn't have answered right before walking on stage, but I did. "Daisy," he yelled, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "It happened. The market just opened. The IPO hit $6 billion. You are officially a billionaire." I froze. My dad thought he was cutting off a broke student. He didn't know he was looking at the owner of a $6 billion tech empire. And the whole world was about to find out. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Daisy Morgan. I am 28 years old. I learned very early in my life that there are two types of children. There are the children who make their parents smile simply by entering a room. These children are light, easy, and uncomplicated. They like the things they're supposed to like. They play catch. They wear the nice clothes. They laugh at the right times. Then there are children like me. I was not light. I was heavy with questions. I was not easy. I was complicated. And when I entered a room, my parents didn't smile. They sighed. They called me intense. It started when I was 7 years old. We were living in a small, beige house in a suburb of California. It was a normal neighborhood. Everyone had a green lawn. Everyone had a dog. My father worked in insurance, and my mother worked part-time at a bakery. They liked things to be standard. They liked to fit in. One afternoon, my mother bought me a coloring book. It was a simple book with pictures of farm animals. She gave me a box of crayons and set me at the kitchen table. "Just have fun, Daisy," she said. "Make it pretty." She went back to washing dishes. She expected me to color the barn red and the pig pink. She expected me to finish a page in 10 minutes and ask for a snack. But I didn't do that. I looked at the picture of the barn. I noticed that the perspective was wrong. The lines of the roof didn't match the lines of the walls. It bothered me. It didn't look like a building that could stand up. So, I took my black crayon and I started to redraw the structural beams. I drew extra lines to show where the support should be. I shaded the ground to show the angle of the sun. I worked for 2 hours. I was sweating. I was biting my tongue in concentration. I wasn't playing, I was fixing the problem. When my mother came back, she looked at the page. She didn't see creativity. She saw a mess of black lines. She saw a child who couldn't follow instructions. "Daisy," she said, her voice full of disappointment. "Why did you ruin it? Why couldn't you just color the pig pink? Why do you have to make everything so complicated?" "The barn was going to fall down, Mom," I explained seriously. "I had to fix the beams." She looked at me like I was an alien. She called my father into the kitchen. "Look at this," she whispered to him. "She's doing it again. She's so intense. It's just a coloring book and she turns it into a construction project." My father looked at me. He had a beer in his hand. He looked tired. "Daisy, relax," he said. "Stop thinking so much. Kids are supposed to have fun. You act like a little old lady." That was the theme of my childhood. Stop thinking, just be normal. As I got older, the gap between us grew wider. In middle school, I became obsessed with mathematics. To me, numbers were a language. They were safer than people. People lied. People said one thing and meant another. But numbers were honest. 2 plus 2 was always 4. It never changed its mind. It never judged you. I spent my allowance on graph paper and calculators. I spent my recess time in the library, reading books about coding and early computer systems. My parents hated it. They wanted a daughter who was popular. They wanted a daughter who was invited to sleepovers. They wanted a cheerleader. I remember the day of my 8th grade talent show. My cousin, Sarah, was staying with us. Sarah was everything my parents wanted. She was bubbly, blonde, and she laughed at all my dad's jokes. For the talent show, Sarah was going to sing a pop song. I was going to demonstrate a robot I had built out of spare parts from the garage. It could move forward and pick up a soda can. Before we left the house, my mom pulled me aside. She fixed my collar, tugging it hard. "Daisy," she said, Are you sure you want to do this robot thing? Yes, I said. It works, Mom. I programmed the sensor myself. It's just, she paused, looking for the right words. It's a little weird, honey. The other girls are dancing or singing. You're going to be up there with a machine. People might laugh. Boys don't like girls who are smarter than them. You don't want to be the brainy girl forever, do you? I don't care about boys, I said. I care about the robot. She sighed. It was that same heavy sigh. You're so difficult. We just want you to be happy, Daisy, but you make it so hard to relate to you. At the show, Sarah sang her song. She was off-key, but she smiled and waved. The audience clapped loudly. My parents cheered. My dad whistled and gave her a standing ovation. Then it was my turn. I put my robot on the stage. I was nervous. I explained how the sensor worked. I pressed the button. The robot moved. It picked up the can. The audience was quiet. A few people clapped politely. It wasn't exciting to them. It was just nerdy. I looked at my parents in the second row. My dad was checking his watch. My mom was looking at her fingernails. They weren't watching me. They were enduring me. They were waiting for it to be over so they could go home and tell Sarah how great she was. That moment broke something inside me. I realized that no matter what I achieved, it wouldn't count. To them, my achievements were just evidence of my strangeness. If I won a math competition, they hid the trophy. If I got an A+ in physics, they asked why I got a B in gym class. By the time I reached high school, I stopped trying to share my life with them. I became a ghost in my own house. I ate dinner quickly and went to my room. I worked on my code until my eyes burned. I knew I had to get out. I knew I had to leave this town where being smart was treated like a disease. I applied to the best universities in the country. I did it secretly. I forged their signatures on the application forms because I knew they wouldn't help me. When the acceptance letter came from the PhD program, a direct track from my undergraduate work, I put it on the kitchen table. It was a full scholarship. It was a golden ticket. I'm leaving, I told them. I'm going to get my doctorate in computer science. My father laughed. He didn't mean to be cruel, perhaps, but it felt cruel. A doctorate? You, Daisy, you can barely remember to take out the trash. You're going to be a professional student. When are you going to get a real job? This is my path, I said, keeping my voice steady. Fine, my dad said. Go, but don't come crying to us when it gets too hard. We are done raising you. You're on your own out there. I packed my bags the next morning. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. They weren't standing on the porch to wave goodbye. The front door was closed. They were inside, probably watching TV, probably relieved that their intense daughter was finally gone. I didn't cry. I turned the radio up. I told myself I didn't need them. But deep down, the little girl inside me was still screaming, begging them to run out of the house and tell me not to go. They never did. The university was a different world. For the first time, I wasn't the weird one. I was surrounded by people who loved data as much as I did. But while I found my intellectual home, I lost my financial safety net. My parents were true to their word. They didn't send a dime. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like mildew. The carpet was sticky. The heater made a banging noise all night. I didn't have a car. I walked everywhere, even in the rain. I ate instant noodles 5 nights a week. My shoes had holes in the soles, and I put cardboard inside them to keep my socks dry. But I didn't care. I was free. And I was building something. During the day, I was a research assistant. I taught classes to bored freshmen. I graded papers. I smiled at professors and acted like a dutiful student. But at night, the real work happened. I had discovered a flaw in how data was transferred between cloud servers. It was a technical thing, boring to explain, but I knew that if I could fix it, it would save tech companies billions of dollars. I started writing a new code. I called it the Morgen compression. I worked like a woman possessed. My social life was zero. I didn't go to parties. I didn't date. I sat in the dark, typing. My back ached. My eyes watered. But every time I compiled the code and it worked, I felt a rush of power that I had never felt before. Then I met Mark. Mark was an MBA student. He was loud, aggressive, and wore suits to class. He was everything I wasn't. We met in a coffee shop when he spilled his latte on my laptop. He apologized, we started talking, and I showed him what I was working on. He stared at my screen for a long time. Then he looked at me. Daisy, he said, serious. Do you know what this is? It's a compression algorithm, I said. No, he said. This is a gold mine. This is the foundation of a billion-dollar company. We need to incorporate now. We became partners. Mark handled the business, the investors, the legal paperwork. I handled the tech. We built the company in secret. We couldn't let the university know because of intellectual property rules. We met in basements. We met in diners at 2 a.m. By my third year of the PhD program, we had secured our first angel investor. He wrote us a check for $500,000. I remember staring at that check. It was more money than my parents had made in their entire lives. My first instinct was to call them. I picked up the phone. I wanted to scream, "Look, I did it, I'm not a failure." But I stopped. I heard my mother's voice in my head. "It's just a gamble, Daisy, you're dreaming. It's not real money." I knew they wouldn't understand. They would tell me to give it back. They would tell me I was going to jail. They would ruin the moment, so I didn't tell them. I kept the secret. But I couldn't stop loving them. That is the curse of a daughter. No matter how much they hurt you, you want to take care of them. I knew things were bad at home. My dad's insurance sales were down. My mom's arthritis was getting worse, and she couldn't work as many hours at the bakery. They were drowning in debt. I decided to help them, but I had to do it in a way that wouldn't bruise their ego. They would never accept money from their student daughter. It would shame them, so I became their invisible savior. I used my share of the investor money. I hired a private accountant to handle it. When their car broke down and they needed a new transmission, a $3,000 repair they couldn't afford, I called the mechanic shop. I paid the bill over the phone. I told the mechanic to tell them, it was a warranty error, the manufacturer covered it. My dad called me that night, sounding triumphant. "Daisy, you won't believe my luck. I talked that mechanic into fixing the car for free. I really gave him a piece of my mind. That's how you handle business." "That's great, Dad," I said, sitting in my cold apartment, smiling sadly. "You're really good at that." When their mortgage was 3 months behind and the bank threatened foreclosure, I stepped in. I bought the debt through a shell company and marked it as current. When my mom needed dental surgery, I paid the clinic anonymously. They thought it was a clerical error in their favor. Over 3 years, I funneled nearly $200,000 into their lives. I saved their credit score. I saved their house. I saved their dignity. And they never knew. In fact, they continued to treat me like the poor one. "We're worried about you, Daisy," my mom would say on the phone. "When are you going to finish this school nonsense? You're almost 30, you have no savings, you have no house. Look at your cousin Sarah, she just bought a beautiful condo. She's an assistant manager at the retail store now." "I'm doing okay, Mom," I would say. "I have everything I need." "You have nothing," she would snap. "You're scraping by. It's embarrassing to tell people my daughter is still a student. Everyone asks what you do and I have to say she's studying. It sounds lazy." It hurt. It hurt so much physically. I wanted to yell, "I own the mortgage on your house. I paid for the teeth in your mouth. I am the CEO of a tech startup." But I swallowed the words. I told myself I was waiting for the big reveal. I was waiting for the IPO. When the company went public, everything would be undeniable. They would see my face on the news. They would see the stock price. And then, finally, they would have to respect me. I held on to that hope like a lifeline. I worked harder. I slept less. We prepared for the IPO. It was scheduled for the same day as my graduation. It was going to be the perfect day. The day I got my title doctor, and the day I got my title billionaire. I didn't know that my parents had one last insult waiting for me. I didn't know that before the triumph, there would be a final, crushing betrayal. The morning of graduation day broke with a fierce, blinding sun. I woke up at 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep. My stomach was twisting in knots. Today was the day. I stood in front of the cracked mirror in my bathroom. I looked at myself. I looked tired. My skin was pale. My eyes were red from lack of sleep. I didn't look like a billionaire. I didn't look like a powerful CEO. I looked like Daisy, the girl who tried too hard. I put on a simple white dress. I didn't have money for fancy clothes. All my cash was tied up in the company equity. I put on the heavy black doctoral gown. I adjusted the velvet hood. "Dr. Daisy Morgen," I said it out loud. It sounded good. I drove my beat-up Honda to the stadium. The steering wheel shook in my hands. I parked far away to save money on the premium spots, a habit I couldn't break. I walked a mile to the entrance, sweating under the gown. I saw my parents' car waiting near the gate. My heart did that familiar jump, a mix of hope and fear. I walked up to them. My dad was wearing his gray suit, the one he wore to funerals. It was tight around the middle. My mom was wearing a floral dress that looked faded. They looked small, they looked older. "Hi Mom, hi Dad," I said, trying to sound cheerful. My dad looked at his watch. "You're late," he said. "We've been standing here for 10 minutes. "I'm sorry," I said. "Traffic was bad." My mom reached out and brushed lint off my gown. She frowned. "You didn't iron this. It looks like you slept in it. Daisy, why can't you ever look polished?" "Sarah is coming today and she looks like a movie star." "Sarah is coming?" I asked. I felt a pit in my stomach. Of course, they brought Sarah. "She wanted to support you," my mom said. "Even though she thinks this degree is a waste of time, too." We walked toward the stadium. The conversation was strained. I tried to tell them about the ceremony. "I'm sitting in the front row," I said. "I'm receiving a special commendation for my research." "That's nice," my dad grunted. "Does the commendation come with a check? Because if not, it doesn't matter." He stopped walking and turned to me. His face was serious. "Listen, Daisy. We need to talk about what happens after today. We're going to a nice lunch with Sarah afterwards. You can come, but you'll have to pay for your own meal. We can't afford to feed you anymore." I blinked. "Dad, it's my graduation. I can pay, that's fine." "Good," he said. "Because things are tight, we have bills, you wouldn't understand." "I understand more than you know," I thought. "I paid your bills." We separated at the gate. They went to the family seating. I went to the graduate holding area. I found my seat. It was a metal folding chair in the middle of a football field. The sun was beating down. Thousands of students were buzzing with excitement. I felt alone. I sat there, clutching my phone. I was waiting for Mark. The stock market opened at 9:30 a.m. Graduation started at 10 a.m. The timing was tight. Mark had texted me 10 minutes ago. "Pre-market trading is insane. Demand is off the charts. Get ready." I was nervous about the money, yes, but I was more nervous about my parents. I kept looking up at the stands, trying to find them in the sea of people. I wanted to see them waving. I wanted to see them smiling. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't Mark, it was a text from Dad. My heart hammered. Maybe he felt bad about the lunch comment. Maybe he was texting to say, "Good luck down there." I opened the message. The words were stark against the white screen. There were no emojis. No "Love, Dad," just cold, hard text. "Daisy, your mother and I have been talking while waiting. We need to be clear. Now that you have this degree, you are cut off. Completely. Don't think you can move back into your old room. We turned it into a sewing room for your mother. And don't ask for money to pay your rent while you look for a job. We have our own lives. You chose to play scientist for 10 years. Now you deal with the real world. Don't expect help. You're on your own." I read it twice. The air left my lungs. It wasn't just the refusal of money. I didn't need their money. It was the timing. It was the malice. They sent this text minutes before I walked on stage. They wanted to destabilize me. They wanted to make sure I felt insecure. They wanted to remind me that I was a burden to them. I looked up at the blurred crowd. I felt tears hot and stinging in my eyes. "You're on your own." The phrase echoed in my head. They had no idea. They had absolutely no idea that they were cutting off the very person who had been keeping them afloat. They thought they were kicking a beggar to the curb. I felt a wave of nausea. I felt stupid. All those years of secret payments, all those years of hoping, and this was the result, a text message. I almost dropped the phone. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run away and hide. But then the phone buzzed again, and again, and again. It started vibrating violently in my hand. The screen lit up. It was Mark calling, and under his name, a notification from a news app popped up. "Breaking, Morgen Technologies IPO shatters records." I stared at it. The tears in my eyes didn't fall. They froze. My sadness didn't disappear, but it changed. It hardened. It turned into something cold and sharp. I looked at the phone. I looked at the text from my dad one last time. "Don't expect help." "Okay, Dad," I whispered to the empty air. "I won't." I swiped the screen to answer Mark. The ringtone was piercing. I had forgotten to silence it. A few heads turned in my direction. "Hello," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant, robotic. "Daisy," Mark's voice was a roar. I had to pull the phone away. "Are you sitting down? Tell me you are sitting down." "I'm sitting," I said. "Mark, what is the number?" "The opening bell just rang," Mark shouted. The stock opened at 40. It jumped to 50 in 3 seconds. "Daisy, the institutional investors are fighting over it. The market cap just crossed $6 billion. I closed my eyes. $6 billion. "Your equity," Mark continued, breathless. "Your 51% stake. Do the math, Daisy. You are worth over $3 billion. Right now, today, you are one of the richest women in America." The world went silent. The noise of the graduation band faded. The chatter of the students disappeared. I was in a bubble of silence. 3 billion, it wasn't just money, it was freedom, it was power. It was a fortress that no one could ever knock down again. The press is going crazy, Mark said. They know you're at the graduation. CNN is live, they are sending crews. Daisy, you need to be ready, your life just changed. I'm ready, I said. I hung up. I sat there, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel small. I felt heavy. I felt like a planet. Around me the whisper began. It started with the student to my left. He was looking at his phone, mouth open. He looked at me, then back at his phone. Holy, he whispered. He nudged the girl next to him. Look at this, is that her? Is that Daisy Morgen? The girl looked. She gasped. That's her, that's the girl in the white dress. The ripple spread. Phones were lifted. People were pointing. The buzz grew louder than the commencement speaker on the stage. Then I saw the movement in the aisle. My parents were coming down. They looked angry. My dad was red-faced, marching past the security guard. He clearly thought I was causing a scene by being on my phone. He thought I was embarrassing the family again. He reached the velvet rope. Daisy, he yelled. His voice was sharp, cutting through the murmurs near us. Put that phone away, have you no respect? He was performing. He wanted everyone to see him parenting the unruly daughter. I sent you a text, he shouted. Did you read it? You need to grow up. Stop playing games on your phone and pay attention. The student next to me stood up. He was a tall guy with glasses. He looked at my dad. Sir, the student said, you might want to shut up. My dad stopped, stunned. Excuse me, who are you? She's not playing games, the student said, holding up his phone screen. She just made $3 billion. My dad blinked. He looked at the student, then at me. What kind of joke is this? It's not a joke, Dad, I said. I stood up. I walked toward the rope. I didn't look down. I looked him right in the eyes. It's real, I said. Before he could answer, the chaos arrived. A news crew, local affiliates who had been nearby, sprinted onto the field. They ignored the security. They ignored the university president. They ran straight for the girl in the wrinkled gown. A camera was shoved in my face. A microphone was thrust forward. Daisy Morgen, Daisy, the reporter was breathless. Can we get a comment? Morgen Tech is officially the highest valued tech IPO of the year. How does it feel to be the youngest female billionaire in the state? The flash of the camera blinded me for a second. My mother let out a small, strangled sound. She grabbed my father's arm to steady herself. Billionaire, she whispered. Daisy. My father looked like he had been slapped. His mouth hung open. He looked at the reporter, then at me. He looked at my wrinkled gown. He looked at his own cheap suit. The realization hit him. I saw it happen. I saw the gears turn in his head. The lesson he tried to teach me with that text message, the $200,000 I had secretly given them, the way they had mocked me for years, it all crashed down on him. Daisy, he stammered. His voice was weak. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said simply. The reporter pushed the microphone closer. Miss Morgen, your parents are here. They must be so proud. Did they help you build this empire? The camera panned to my dad. He straightened up immediately. He put on a fake smile, the same smile he used for clients. He was ready to take credit. He was ready to say, yes, we supported her all along. I looked at him. I saw the hope in his eyes. He wanted me to save him. He wanted me to lie for him. I leaned into the microphone. The stadium was dead silent. Everyone was waiting. No, I said clearly. My voice echoed over the loudspeakers. They didn't help. I built this alone. In fact, my father just texted me 10 minutes ago to tell me I was on my own. The camera zoomed in on my father's face. His fake smile crumbled. He looked naked in front of the world. He looked small. And he was right, I said, turning back to the camera. I am on my own, and I've never been stronger. I turned my back on them. I walked back to my seat. And as I sat down, the applause started. Not from my parents, but from the thousands of strangers who saw the truth. It started slow, then it became a roar. I took a deep breath. The air smelled sweet. I was finally free. The moments after I spoke into the microphone were a blur of noise and flashing lights. But for me, the world had narrowed down to the 3 feet of space between me and my parents. The crowd behind me was cheering. It was a surreal sound. Thousands of strangers clapping for my success, while the 2 people who gave me life stood there looking like they were attending a funeral. My father's face had gone from red to a sickly shade of gray. My mother was gripping her handbag so tightly her knuckles were white. Security guards, Big men in yellow jackets were starting to push back the press. They were creating a circle around us. It was a bubble of protection, but inside that bubble the air was toxic. "Daisy," my father said again. His voice wasn't booming anymore. It was thin. It sounded like paper tearing. "What? What did you just say?" He wasn't asking about the money. He was asking about what I told the reporter. He was asking about the truth I had just spilled on national television. "I told them the truth, Dad," I said. I stood straight. My gown was heavy, but I didn't feel the weight anymore. "You told me I was on my own, I just confirmed it." "But," he looked around at the students staring at us. He lowered his voice to a hiss. "You humiliated us. In front of everyone. How could you do that, after everything we've done for you?" I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was sharp and cold. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated. "Dad, 10 minutes ago you sent me a text message cutting me off. You told me not to expect help. You told me I was going to be poor because I chose to be a scientist. Do you remember that?" That was just a lesson," he stammered. He wiped sweat from his upper lip. "I was trying to motivate you. I was trying to make you tough. The world is hard, Daisy. I wanted you to be ready." "I am ready," I said. "I'm so ready that I built a $6 billion company while you were busy comparing me to cousin Sarah." My mother stepped forward. Her eyes were wide, darting between me and the security guards. She looked terrified, but I could also see the gears turning in her head. She was doing the math. "Daisy," she said, her voice shaking. "Is it true, the number the man on the phone said? 3 billion. Is that real money?" "It's equity, Mom," I said. "But yes, it's real. I own 51% of the company." She let out a breath. Her hand reached out to touch my arm, but I took a step back. I didn't want her to touch me. Not yet, not while the sting of their rejection was still so fresh. "Oh, honey," she said, and her tone changed instantly. It went from the critical, nagging tone she had used in the parking lot to a soft, wheedling voice. "We didn't know. Why didn't you tell us? We would have supported you. We would have been your biggest cheerleaders." "You had 28 years to be my cheerleaders," I said softly. "You didn't need to know I was rich to be proud of me. You should have been proud of me when I won the coding competition in high school. You should have been proud of me when I got the scholarship. You should have been proud of me just for working hard." "We were proud," my dad lied. He was regaining some of his bluster now. We express it differently. We wanted you to be practical. We were worried about you starving in some basement." "Worried about me starving?" I looked at him. "Dad, who do you think paid for the new roof on the house last year?" He blinked. "What? The roof," I said. "The new shingles. The contractor said it cost $12,000. "Who paid for it?" "That was a state grant," my dad said confidently. "I applied for a senior citizen grant. The contractor said we qualified." I shook my head. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were steady. I opened my banking app. I scrolled back through the history. "Look," I said. I held the screen up to his face. "What is this?" he asked, squinting at the screen. "That is a wire transfer," I said. $12,000. "From DM Holdings." "That's me, Daisy Morgen Holdings. I paid the contractor. I told him to tell you it was a grant because I knew you would never take money from your failure of a daughter." He stared at the screen. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And the car," I continued. I scrolled to another transaction. "The transmission repair, $3,000. You told everyone you talked the mechanic into doing it for free because you're such a good negotiator." "You didn't, I paid him over the phone." My mother gasped. She put her hand over her mouth. "The dental surgery," she whispered, "when I got my implants." $8,000, I said. "Paid by me." I told the clinic to mark it as a clerical error. "And the credit card debt," I said, looking at my father. "The $20,000 that magically disappeared from your balance 2 years ago. You thought the bank made a mistake and forgot to collect. They didn't. I bought the debt and forgave it." I listed them all. Every secret payment. Every time I had saved them from ruin while eating instant noodles in my cold apartment. Every time I had acted like their guardian angel while they treated me like a disappointment. "I have spent nearly $200,000 keeping you two afloat," I said. My voice was calm, but the words hit them like stones. "I did it because I loved you. I did it because I wanted you to be safe. And while I was doing that, you were telling cousin Sarah how much better she was than me because she was an assistant manager at a retail store." My father looked like he was going to be sick. The narrative he had built for his whole life, that he was the provider, the strong one, the one who had to teach me about the real world, was crumbling. He wasn't the provider. He wasn't the strong one. I was. He looked at the phone screen, then at my face. He saw the tired lines under my eyes. He saw the determination in my jaw. For the first time, he didn't see a child. He saw a stranger. A powerful, terrifying stranger who happened to be his daughter. You, he whispered, you did all that? Yes, I said. And I never asked for a thank you. I never asked for credit. All I wanted was for you to be nice to me, just nice. And you couldn't even do that. You couldn't even wait until the ceremony was over to text me that I was a burden. The crowd around us had gone silent. The students near the rope were listening. They had heard about the payments. I saw a girl wiping tears from her eyes. My mother was crying now. Silent, shocked tears. She looked at her shoes. We thought you were broke, she sobbed. We thought you were wasting your life. I was building a life, I corrected her. You just didn't bother to look at it. The security guard stepped closer. Miss Morgan, he said respectfully, the press is getting aggressive. We need to move you to a secure location. We have a tent set up for VIPs. Your family can come. I looked at my parents. They looked broken. Part of me wanted to leave them there in the crowd. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back, but I wasn't them. I wasn't cruel. Come on, I said to them. Follow me. I turned and walked toward the VIP tent. My head was high. My parents followed behind me, heads bowed, like two people marching to a sentencing. The walk to the VIP tent was a gauntlet. The news had spread fast. It wasn't just the local news anymore. The big networks had helicopters circling overhead. The sound of the chopper blades chopping the air made everything feel like an action movie. I walked in the middle of a diamond formation of security guards. My parents stumbled along behind me. They were not used to this. They were used to the quiet suburbs. They were terrified of the noise, the shouting, the aggression of the paparazzi. Daisy, over here, just one photo. Miss Morgan, is it true you're self-made? Mr. Morgan, how does it feel to be the father of a billionaire? A reporter with a frantic look in his eyes broke through the line. He shoved a microphone right into my father's face. Sir, the reporter yelled, did you know about the company? Did you invest early? People are saying this is the greatest American success story since Steve Jobs. What was your role? My father stopped walking. He looked like a deer in headlights. The camera lens was inches from his nose. This was the moment. This was the moment where he could have lied. He could have said, yes, we always knew she was special. We nurtured her genius. It's what most parents would do. It's what he wanted to do. I could see the instinct in his eyes. He wanted to save face. But then he looked at me. I was standing a few feet ahead watching him. I wasn't smiling. I was just watching. He knew that if he lied, I would correct him. He knew I had the receipts. He knew I had the power now. He slumped. His shoulders collapsed. He looked into the camera, and for the first time in his life, his ego completely vanished. He croaked. He cleared his throat. I didn't do anything. I didn't know. You didn't know, the reporter pressed. But surely you recognized her talent. She's a genius coder. Did you buy her first computer? My father flinched. I remembered my first computer. I had bought it myself with money I earned mowing lawns and cleaning gutters when I was 14. My dad had complained that the computer used too much electricity. No, my father whispered. I told her to play outside. What about tuition? The reporter asked. Did you fund her research? No, my father said. He looked down at the grass. She got a scholarship, we didn't pay for school. The reporter looked confused. So she did this entirely without family support, while you were, where? We were at home, my father said. His voice was so quiet the reporter had to lean in. We were at home waiting for her to get a real job. The reporter pulled the microphone back. He looked at the camera with a stunned expression. There you have it, folks. A truly self-made story. Daisy Morgan, built from nothing, with zero support from the family standing right here. My mother let out a sob. She covered her face with her hands. The cameras captured it all. They captured the shame. They captured the regret. It was a public humbling. It was the kind of exposure my parents feared more than anything. They cared so much about what the neighbors thought. They cared so much about appearance. And now the whole world was seeing them as the neglectful, short-sighted parents they were. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy to see them in pain. I felt a deep, heavy sadness. It didn't have to be this way. This moment could have been a celebration. We could have been hugging. They could have been laughing, saying, we knew it, we knew she could do it. But they had chosen their path. They had chosen to dismiss me every single day for 20 years. And now they had to walk that path while the whole world watched. "Let's go," I said to the guards. "Get them out of here." We pushed through the last of the crowd and entered the VIP tent. The flap closed behind us, cutting off the noise of the helicopters and the shouting. The silence in the tent was sudden and ringing. It smelled like canvas and cut grass. There was a table with water bottles and a few chairs. I walked to a chair and sat down. My legs were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me feeling hollow. My parents stood near the entrance. They didn't sit. They looked like naughty children waiting for the principal. My mother was wiping her eyes with a tissue she found in her purse. My father was staring at the floor, his hands clasping and unclasping. We stayed like that for a long time. Just the sound of my mother's sniffles and the distant hum of the crowd outside. I opened a bottle of water and took a drink. My throat was dry. "Sit down," I said. They sat. They sat on the edge of the chairs, stiff and uncomfortable. "So," I said. I looked at them. "Now you know." "Daisy," my mom started. Her voice was trembling. We are just in shock. It's too much to take in." "I know," I said. "It's a lot." "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked again. "Why did you keep it a secret?" "Because you would have laughed," I said simply. "We wouldn't have," she began. "Yes, you would have," I cut her off. "Mom, be honest. If I had told you 2 years ago that I was building a billion-dollar company in my dorm room, what would you have said? You would have told me I was crazy. You would have told me to focus on my classes. You would have told me to be more like Sarah." She opened her mouth to argue, but then she closed it. She knew I was right. She looked down at her hands. "And," I added, "if I had told you about the money, if I had told you I had access to investor funds, you would have asked for it." My father looked up sharply. "We never asked you for money." "You didn't have to," I said. "I gave it to you anyway. But if you knew I had it, if you knew there was a pot of gold, you would have guilted me. You would have told me I owed it to the family. You would have made me feel like a bad daughter if I didn't buy you a new house immediately." My father rubbed his face with his hands. He looked old. The arrogance was gone. "Is that what you think of us, that we are just leeches?" "I think you are people who were scared," I said. "And because you were scared of being poor, you tried to make me scared too." "But I wasn't scared, Dad. I was busy." He looked at me for a long time. I saw his eyes fill with tears. I had never seen my father cry, not once, not when his parents died, not when he lost his job 10 years ago. He was a stone, but the stone was cracking. The tent felt small. The air was thick with things unsaid. My father took a deep, shuddering breath. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at his hands, hands that had worked hard, yes, but hands that had never held mine when I needed it. "I was jealous," he said. The words were so quiet I almost didn't hear them. "What?" I asked. "I was jealous," he said louder. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. "Daisy, I was a C student. I barely graduated high school. I worked in insurance because it was safe. I never took a risk in my life." He paused, struggling to get the words out. "When you were little, when you were drawing those complex things, when you were fixing the computer, it scared me. You were so smart. You were smarter than me by the time you were 10. And it made me feel stupid." I stared at him. I had always thought he dismissed me because he thought I was weird. I never thought he was intimidated. "I wanted you to be normal," he continued, tears spilling onto his cheeks, "because I understood normal. I could be a father to a normal girl. I could teach her how to throw a ball. I could help her with her homework. But you didn't need my help. You were flying, and I was stuck on the ground, so I tried to pull you down." He covered his face with his hands and sobbed. It was a guttural, ugly sound. "I tried to pull you down so I wouldn't feel so small. And I convinced myself I was doing it for your own good. I told myself I was teaching you humility, but I was just breaking you." My mother reached out and touched his shoulder. She was crying too. She looked at me. "And she whispered, I just wanted to fit in with the other mothers. They all talked about dance class and prom dresses. I didn't know how to talk about robots. I didn't know how to brag about a daughter who sat in the dark writing code. I felt left out, so I pushed you to be like Sarah. I wanted the easy daughter. I wanted the daughter who made me look good to the neighbors." She shook her head. "We were so selfish. We were so incredibly selfish." I sat there, frozen. I had waited my whole life for an apology. I had rehearsed this conversation in my head 1,000 times. In my imagination, I would scream at them. I would throw a table. I would make them beg. But now that it was happening, I didn't feel angry. I felt a strange sense of relief. The monster wasn't a monster. The monster was just two insecure people who didn't know how to raise a child who was different. "You hurt me," I said. My voice was steady. You hurt me more than anyone else in the world. You made me feel like I was unlovable. I know, my dad sobbed. I know, and I can't fix it. I can't take back the last 20 years. I can't take back that text I sent this morning. God, that text. I will regret that for the rest of my life. You should, I said. It was cruel. I'm sorry, he said. He looked at me, his face wet with tears. Daisy, I am so sorry. Not because you're rich. I don't care about the money right now. I'm sorry because I missed it. I missed knowing you. I missed seeing my own daughter grow up. My mother nodded. We are so proud of you, Daisy. And we are so ashamed of ourselves. It was the first time they had ever said those words. We are ashamed. I looked at them. They looked small and pathetic. They weren't the giants who controlled my happiness anymore. They were just two old people sitting in a tent. I stood up. I walked over to them. I didn't hug them. I wasn't ready for that. But I put my hand on my father's shoulder. I accept your apology, I said. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. He held on like a drowning man. But, I said, pulling my hand back gently, things are going to be different now. I'm not the little girl you can lecture anymore. And I'm not the secret bank account you can drain. If you want to be in my life, it's going to be on my terms. Anything, my dad said. Anything you want. We'll see, I said. The flap of the tent opened. A security guard poked his head in. Miss Morgan, the limousine is here to take you to the press conference, and your CFO is on the line again. I nodded. I'm coming. I looked at my parents. You can take the limo with me, or you can take your car home. My dad stood up. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He looked at me with a newfound respect, fear mixed with awe. We'll follow you, he said humble. We don't want to intrude, we'll be there if you need us. Okay, I said. I turned and walked out of the tent. I stepped back into the sunlight. The cameras started flashing again, but I didn't blink. The weeks following graduation were a whirlwind. My face was on the cover of Forbes. I was interviewed by Oprah. I rang the opening bell at the stock exchange. But the real change happened in the quiet moments with my family. We had a dinner 2 weeks later. I invited them to a restaurant, a nice one but not too flashy. I didn't want to overwhelm them. When I walked in, they were already seated. They stood up when they saw me. That was new. My father pulled out my chair. That was definitely new. Hi, Daisy, my mom said. She looked nervous. She was wearing a new dress, one that I knew she bought with her own money because she was terrified of asking me for anything. Hi, Mom, I said. We sat down. The waiter came over and treated me like royalty. He knew who I was. My parents watched this interaction with wide eyes. When the waiter left, I put my hands on the table. Okay, I said. Let's talk about the rules. Rules, my dad asked. Yes, I said. I want to have a relationship with you. You are my parents. But the dynamic we had before, the one where you criticize me and I pay your bills in secret, that is over. They nodded quickly. Of course, my dad said. First, I said, no more comparisons. I never want to hear the name Cousin Sarah again unless she is actually in the room. I don't care about her job. I don't care about her condo. If you compare me to her or anyone else, I will leave the dinner. Immediately. Understood, my mom said softly. We won't mention her. Second, I continued. I am going to pay off your mortgage officially. I'm going to set up a retirement fund for you. My dad started to protest. Daisy, no, we can't accept. Stop, I held up a hand. I'm doing it because I can. And because I don't want you to worry. But here is the condition. You never, ever give me advice on money again. You don't tell me how to spend it. You don't tell me I'm being reckless. You respect that I know what I'm doing. If you start lecturing me about pennies, the funding stops. My dad swallowed hard. It was a complete reversal of roles. He was the child now, and I was the provider setting the allowance rules. It was humbling for him, but he nodded. I promise, he said. I trust you, Daisy. You obviously know more than I do. And third, I said, my voice softening, I need you to get to know me, the real me, not the daughter you wanted, but the daughter you have. I want you to ask me about my work, and I want you to actually listen to the answer. I don't want you to glaze over. I want you to try to understand what I do. We will, my mom said. She reached across the table and took my hand. We bought a book, she said shyly. Coding for Beginners. Your dad and I are reading it. It's hard, but we want to understand what you built. I felt a lump in my throat. That was the sweetest thing they had ever done. Thank you, I said. The dinner was awkward at times. Old habits are hard to break. My dad almost made a comment about my choice of appetizer being too fancy, but he caught himself. He stopped, took a breath, and said, It looks delicious. I saw them trying. That was all I asked for. I realized that night that they would never fully understand my world. They would never be comfortable with the billions. They would always be small-town people who liked coupon cutting and simple things. And that was okay. I didn't need them to be like me. I just needed them to respect me. I had spent my whole life shrinking to fit into their box. I had tried to make myself smaller so I wouldn't intimidate them, but I had finally burst out of the box. I was huge now. I took up space. And surprisingly, they were learning to make room for me. My dad asked me about the stock market later that night. He didn't lecture. He asked, "Daisy, why does the price fluctuate like that?" I explained it to him. He listened. He nodded. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and pride. "You're a smart kid, Daisy," he said. "I know, Dad," I smiled. I always was. 6 months later, I was standing in my new office. It was on the top floor of a skyscraper in San Francisco. The walls were glass. I could see the ocean. I could see the bridges. I was holding a framed photo. It was a picture from my graduation. In the photo, I was looking at the camera, chin up, defiant. My parents were in the background, looking shocked. I kept it on my desk as a reminder. A reminder that family is complicated. A reminder that people can love you and still hurt you deeply. A reminder that sometimes, the people who are supposed to support you are the ones holding you back. I put the photo down and walked to the window. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman who was tired but happy. I saw a woman who wore what she wanted, said what she wanted, and built what she wanted. I thought about all the people out there who are like I was. Maybe you are the weird kid in your family. Maybe you are the artist in a family of accountants. Maybe you are the quiet one in a family of loudmouths. Maybe your parents make you feel small. Maybe they compare you to your cousin or your brother or the neighbor's kid. Maybe they tell you that your dreams are stupid. Maybe they tell you to be realistic. Maybe they cut you off. I want to speak directly to you. It hurts. I know it hurts. You want their approval more than anything. You want them to look at you and say, "Good job." You might spend years working yourself to the bone just to get that one nod of validation. But here is the truth I learned. You cannot force them to see you. You can shout, you can cry, you can win awards, you can make billions of dollars. And sometimes they still won't see you. My parents finally saw me, but only because I forced them to look. Only because the rest of the world screamed it at them. And even now, their understanding is imperfect. So don't wait for them. Don't wait for their permission to be great. Don't wait for their applause to follow your passion. If I had listened to my father, I would be working a job I hated, living in a town I outgrew, trying to be a person I am not. I would have been normal. And I would have been miserable. Instead, I chose to be intense. I chose to be difficult. I chose to be myself. It cost me years of loneliness. It cost me a lot of tears. But standing here, looking at the empire I built with my own 2 hands, I can tell you one thing for sure. The view is worth it. If your family underestimates you, let them. Let them doubt. Let them gossip. Let them send their cruel texts. You just keep working. You just keep building. You just keep coding or painting or writing or whatever it is that sets your soul on fire. Because one day, the results will speak so loudly that no one can interrupt them. One day, you will stand on your own stage. And you won't need them to clap for you, because you will know, deep in your bones, that you are enough. I am Daisy Morgen. I am a scientist. I am a billionaire. And I am finally, truly free. I turned away from the window, walked back to my desk, and went back to work.